Okay. There's Steve coming in. So I thought it would be interesting to kind of go over
Go.
this ODART exercise that some of us did. It was it was an interesting thing, and I'm kind of hoping that we'll be able to be more involved next year because we'll actually have an airport close by to do it with. So that'll be interesting. So that was one topic. Uh, just wanted to, I think most of you have already seen the neighborhood radio thing, but I'll we can focus just on the ham piece just a bit. And then a little discussion about a countywide ham Zoom meeting. I'm looking for ideas and discussions and a little discussion. And then I've got a little interesting thing you might find interesting that I'll share. So that's what we got. So there were uh, Michael and I and John Handler participated in this ODART, Oregon Disaster Airlift Response Team is the name of the group that organized it, and it was called Whale Run 2025. I never heard why it was called Whale Run. Did you ever hear, Michael?
No, I could guess, but it'd be all speculation.
Okay. So who knows why it's called that? I didn't think to ask the organizers. But anyhow, it was 2 days. Uh, the first day we didn't participate. Oh, and so the basic idea of ODART is these are private pilots that are offering their services in the event of an emergency to emergency managers in the counties around Oregon. And I think they've got like 50 pilots kind of as part of the group. And then they have the associated logistics with that, where they have the communications piece and they also have some logistics support for like where to get emergency supplies and such. So the first part, they've been doing this exercise. This is the fourth year of them doing this exercise, and this year Tillamook County was invited to participate as one of the counties. And so there's two part. There was 2 days. On June 7th, they had a thing where they did windshield survey flights, and this is a map of where all. This is most of Oregon, and they had these are all the flight patterns that the different planes or different colors, and these are all the flight patterns that they did, and they're basically they're the scenario was a Cascadia uh, with a big storm on top of it. So it was kind of a double whammy scenario. And so this is kind of the day following that. And the emergency managers want to know what's going on. And so they fly these routes and the pilots basically do damage assessment as they go along. And then that gets sent to the emergency managers in the uh, different counties that are uh, affected. And I we didn't participate in this, so I don't have all the relevant data of it, but I I understand there were um, five or six total pilots flying around doing stuff on that day. So that was kind of interesting. The part that we participated in was on the next week, which was from the scenario point of view, this was the next day. So the first day was the windshield survey thing, first day after the event. And then the second day after the event was this, where they did cargo flights. And they have this idea of uh, depot airports that are kind of far away from the disaster, that have supplies, or that gather up supplies, and then they have staging airports. So they fly these all the from the depot airport, they fly the supplies into these staging airports. And the ones for this particular exercise were in Aurora, Albany, and Cresswell. So they're trying to get it in the valley, um, uh, adjacent to the coast. And then there was all these impact areas. So that's we'd be an impact area if this kind of scenario happened. And these are all of the impact areas that participated in this exercise. So there were Clatsop County had three, Coos County, Deschutes. They even went down to California, so they had Humboldt County, Lane County, Lewis County, that's up in Washington, Lincoln County, and of course Tillamook. So there were flights that went from the staging airports to these impact airports throughout the day, delivering supplies. And it seemed like each flight had between 200 and 300 pounds of cargo that they could carry. And so if you look at our results, we had a total of 800 pounds of food. So they actually, uh, it wasn't necessarily disaster food. There was a bunch of perishable things, but they'd gotten donations of food just like we do for the food bank thing, and they had they used that as the vehicle. And then what they had at Tillamook was they had when the planes would come in, they would unload the cargo, and the ODHS, uh, the group that does the health stuff. I can't remember what the acronym is, but they had people there that they'd inventory everything that came in, and uh, they staged it for delivery to uh, the local food pantry there in Tillamook. So it was kind of so they practiced all of the processes that they needed to check in the material, uh, distribute it, and then get it to the people that needed it, basically. So they had all that infrastructure in place. So they had 800 pounds of food, and they had one cooler that was a medical cooler that was kind of simulated to be full of medical supplies, perishable medical supplies and such. So they had a cooler of that. And then there was one simulated patient evacuation, so that there was I forget, it was somebody with a broken leg or something that they wanted that they wanted to evacuate. And so they had to kind of negotiate with the pilot and stuff about whether he could be evacuated on these flights and stuff. So they had that process um, kind of worked out, because normally these pilots are not kind of set up to do air ambulance service. This was something where the person would be passenger in the plane, but it would just be one. He would be on his own. There wasn't any like medical staff that would go with him and such. And all total, from the comms standpoint, there were 17 WinLink messages. So we had John Handler had a GMRS radio kind of on the flight line where the planes would show up. And then we had the medical reserve trailer, one of them kind of nearby. And so there was the communication between the flight line and the trailer, which was serving as the EOC. We used GMRS. And then for communicating with the staging airports, there's a whole process that was involved about communicating with weather reports and takeoffs and landings and all that kind of stuff. That was all done via WinLink. Um, and also, we simulated the Tillamook emergency manager, Randy, made a resource request. And so we simulated that with 213 resource request forms and stuff and sent that over to Aurora. Aurora was our staging airport where all the airplanes came from. So that was kind of the overview. This is a picture of the airport down in Tillamook, and the hangar is over here, and then they've got the runways, the two runways, and this is the um, terminal the for the airport, and then we were at apron 2, which is over here, and it's there's a of course there's a fence that goes all the way around the airport, and the the various folks, the planes would come over here and stay inside the fence, and so all the logistics people and stuff were over here in things, and then we parked the trailer, the MRC trailer, just outside the fence on this kind of circle apron thing. So we simulated like the EOC was far away, but in reality, we could just walk back and forth and talk to Randy or talk to John in case we needed to do things. And one of the things we found out is Google Maps actually gives you the frequency of the uh, terminal for getting, for radio, for the pilots to use to talk to the tower at the airport. And so it's at 100, this is 122.8 megahertz AM is what they use for aviation bands. So, if you have a radio that supports aircraft band, you can find out what the main frequency is for any airport in the country by looking on Google Maps, which is pretty cool. Then here's a bunch of pictures of what was going on. So this was one of the flights, and they're unloading all the stuff. And here's the MRC trailer back over on the other side of the fence. So it was definitely close in. So maybe a little bit better picture of it. So they would just pull up by the logistics people, and they had hand trucks and stuff and unload, and it's pretty easy. We had 2 different pilots come in. So these are the 2 planes, and these are various Connex boxes that store emergency supplies, because this location is a EAP, a evacuation access point. And if you remember when we had the big exercise up at Underhill Plaza and with all the blow up tents and all that kind of stuff, well, all that equipment is in these Connex boxes down at the airport right now. We didn't use any of that stuff, but that's where that stuff is right now. Let's see. There's one of the wonderful MRC trailers. So it's got UHF, VHF ham in there and GMRS. There's a couple handhelds. There's the same radio that we use in Solar Radio Go boxes. So if if you have a Solar Radio Go box, you could go into this trailer and it would be familiar operating with it. It also has WinLink and such. And there's Starlink up here, so we had the Starlink activated. Let's see. Here's the tower for the airport. There wasn't actually anybody in that right now. The tower, the airport manager was over at the terminal area. There's Michael with operating WinLink within the trailer. So it's nicely set up. They Velda and John Handler did a wonderful job speccing the trailer. It's got solar panels on the roof. It's got generators. It's got, there's printers, and I mean, it's a very, very well specced out trailer, and you can operate from in there and be out of the wind and cold. It's got heaters and air conditioning and all that. So pretty nice gig if we ever have to deploy in one of those things. Let's see. So just the after action report comments that we made was the GMRS worked fine between the flight line and the trailer. They were pretty close. The real EOC is in the sheriff's office, which is just outside of that picture, right? It's right in that same area. And for a whole host of reasons, we didn't have access to the EOC, the real EOC. But if we had, we would have been able to use GMRS from the flight line to the real EOC, no problem. WinLink worked great for complex resource requests and stuff. So they had a form. Maybe you've seen a resource request form. It's this standard ICS form, and it says I need all these supplies, and you just list all these supplies and stuff. And so it's a very complex form. It would take forever to send that form via voice, and probably lots of mistakes and stuff. But WinLink just worked perfect for that. Somebody could handwrite on the form, and then Michael did the transcription of the form into the WinLink stuff and the WinLink version of the form. And it worked pretty well. One of the things that didn't work so well with WinLink was WinLink supports tactical call signs. So you don't have to know somebody's real call sign. You could say they had pre-set up. Each of the staging airports, for instance, had a call sign that was like Aurora, ODART Aurora, and all we'd have to do is send to ODART Aurora, and you'd make sure you knew would get to the right person at Aurora, supposedly. Well, for whatever reason, a lot of places their ODAR, their tactical call signs didn't work as they should. Ours did, so that was good. I haven't heard why theirs didn't. Uh, we had one little minor thing that we didn't. You're supposed to send from your tactical call sign, and we didn't uh, train on how to do that. So we ended up just sending. We were using the K7, KB7 EOC, and so our messages, instead of coming from Tillamook, were coming from that call sign, and um, it was like, oh, we hadn't realized that how you do it with tactical call signs. Uh, whoops, sorry. The we had the organizers were actually pretty surprised that most of the places had Starlink. So Starlink has taken over emergency communications stuff by storm. And so a lot of these organizations were had it available. We were supposed to use HF WinLink, but we don't have HF in that trailer. So we chose to use regular VHF WinLink. And but we had Starlink there. We could have used the Starlink if we needed to, but it's almost too easy to to use Starlink. And it ended up the HF conditions were not very good. This was in that time where we had some solar storms and stuff, and man, that really raises havoc with the HF. So it lots of the different staging areas and airports that were using HF WinLink, they got the messages through, but it was pretty tough for them. Um, for those of you who are a little familiar with WinLink, there's a way that when you send a message, when it gets to when it gets to the destination, it'll the destination will send an acknowledgement automatically back. Which is really nice for knowing that your message made it. And for whatever reasons, they didn't specify that those should have been used. And so when we were sending off a message, we kind of like, well, if they didn't respond, we don't know whether they got it or not, or whether they're just not responding. So that was, I think they'll change that in future ones. The first flight went to the wrong apron. So if you kind of remember, go back, the pilot came in and he went over here to the general aviation terminal, and we're way over here. And, it was like, hey, over here. And it was, people would go out onto the thing here and they go, well, probably not a good idea to like sprint across here and try to get a hold of the pilot. And we didn't have any aviation radios. We had a radio that could receive, but we didn't have any aviation radios to talk to the pilot and say, hey, come over to apron 2. So that was kind of okay, we need to have that capability if we're going to be if we're going to be operating around an airport. We need that thing. And so eventually somebody got a hold by a cell phone, which wasn't supposed to be working. Somebody got a hold of the guy at the airport manager that was at the terminal over there, and he was able to tell the pilot, no, we go over there. And so the pilot finally taxied all the way over to where he was supposed to be. But so what we realized is that we need to have a ground school session to where we can uh, and aviation radios so that we know how to talk on, talk to pilots in their lingo, and uh, so we can, help out better that way because we're supposed to be comms, not just ham radio, but GMRS and ham and aviation apparently if we're going to be doing these kinds of things. The other things that happened is these pilots didn't use the forms they were supposed to use. They had ODART has all these forms that they created for the pilots to keep track of things, and some of those forms were supposed to be given to us so that we could help communicate things back, and they didn't do that. And apparently that's been a problem at all the different times that they've done it, where the pilots, they focus on the flying part and filling out forms. That's not their thing. So it sounded like they're they were gonna try next year to be kind of beef that up a little bit and do some more training for the pilots. And then um, the exercise scenario had us having two flights, one with each plane. And so we had the two flights and we did all the logistic stuff we had to do. And we said, okay, great. And we sent our deactivation notice and packed up, drove back to Manzanita. And I just happened to, as I was packing up the laptop and the WinLink laptop and stuff, I said, "Oh, just check and see if there was anything new happen." And when I checked, it, I got a new another flight is coming. It had just left Aurora, and its ETA was later. Yeah, and so it was like, oh, whoa, well, that's interesting. So I had to get a hold of Randy and the emergency manager, and he he happened to still be there on the site, and they were able to unload the stuff and get it into the logistics flow and stuff. But that was kind of um, a little embarrassing that we missed that message. And it highlighted also that there wasn't a uh, kind of a closed loop on that. So that the protocol will have to fix that next time. So anyhow, that's kind of the overview of it. It's it was quite a large, overall undertaking. It took a lot of meetings. Oh my God, they had so many meetings about this thing, and there were lots of moving parts about it. And they really wanted to use the airport at Nehalem Bay State Park, which would have really made things easier for us. um, but it was closed. The park was closed. The airport was closed, so we couldn't use it. But next year, we've said, okay, we'll do it next year, and we'll do both Tillamook and Nehalem Bay. So that ought to be pretty cool. So we can have a lot more participation and stuff next year. We can kind of enhance the scenario locally. We'll just have to make believe that airport is still there in the event of a tsunami. So, which
John, with the airport or with the aircraft radios, is that a different license, or is that something the H8 and or the H3 can do, or
the it's correct me if I'm wrong, Michael, you might have looked into it. The I believe that it's it's a unlicensed. That had we had had we had a radio that could transmit, we could have used it.
So ground crew working at an airport, or often what they call a FBO, fixed base operations. It turns out the ground crew do not need a license because I had chased all over the FCC's website looking for aviation licenses, and the TID radio line won't transmit on in AM on the frequencies that we need. And typically, most of the HTs that pilots or ground crew have are made by Yaesu. So the colonel at the Civil Air Patrol came up and said, looked at us and said, "Where's your Yaesu?" And I said, "Well, I left mine at home," and then didn't realize that she was talking about an aviation radio, not a just a general purpose HT. So they are going to be the Civil Air Patrol is going to be teaching a ground school in October, I think it is, and I'm going to look into that and see what radios they recommend and just try and understand the the protocol that they use in talking and the lingo and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So the some of the TID radios, the little one, the H3, already has an already supports aircraft band, and there's a rumor that there's the next rev of the H8, the one that we'll talk about next, that will have aircraft band in it as well. So you can listen basically with it, which was helpful. We had an H8 in the trailer, and it was helpful to hear the pilots and the dialogue coming in, because you got a chance to get their flight number or their tail numbers and stuff ahead of time. So if I could see where we'd include an aircraft radio maybe in the trailers, in one of the, as the standard set of radios that we include in those things. We just have an HF, an aircraft handheld, so we could talk if we had to.
John, was Flight Radar 24 used at all to, or did you even know which aircraft were coming in before they landed?
Yeah, we did, because we've got WinLink messages from the staging airport saying, here's the aircraft, here's the flight, here's the tail number, here's the expected time of arrival, all that kind of stuff. So we knew they were coming in. From where we were, you couldn't um, you couldn't read their tail numbers until they came over. So there'd be an aircraft, coming in and on an approach, and we wouldn't know whether that was the one that was one of our planes, or whether it was just somebody else coming around. So that's why having the being able to talk to the pilot would be a good.
Well, I was wondering, doesn't Flight Radar give you the tail numbers of the planes coming in?
Uh, well, we didn't have that. We
That
would
was
have,
just a question.
yeah, we didn't have access to that. We could have had access to that if we'd used
Starlink.
the Starlink to get it. So, I mean, that's something we can, look at for next year and stuff, to see if that actually works as we think it would. So anyhow, it was fun. I learned a whole lot of stuff that I didn't know about aircraft operations and everything. And those pilots are very supportive of you doing this. The third flight that we missed was actually one of the Oops. This one was a gal that was flying this one, and she had gone back to Aurora, picked up more stuff, and came back. So
Wow.
it doesn't take very long. I think most of the flights were, less than 30 minutes. So they were able to, they could come back and forth several times in a day.
John, will this be an exercise that will happen rain or shine?
Well, that's the thing. They don't, as you can see, the weather was cool, but it was uh, no rain or anything. Uh, that's the big question: is what would the airports in a big earthquake and stuff, would the runways still be okay? And then with the what's the weather? They can't fly in
Right.
a lot of times. So it's kind of a nice to have capability, but nobody's going to count on it for things.
Well, and coming to Nehalem Bay State Park, it's going to be all VFR because there's no equipment support there, and I don't know if Tillamook has landing beacons for them. I would imagine they might have an ILS system, but coming to Nehalem, it's going to have to be visual flight rules.
There is something there at the end of the runway, though.
Oh, at Nehalem?
Yeah, yeah. If you pull into the parking lot there and kind of walk towards the runway, there's some solar powered thing there.
Huh.
So
I'll have to go check that out.
yeah, I don't know what it does, but uh, there's a windsock. That's about it. Yeah. Okay, well, let's see. So that was all that. Then I just wanted to mention the new radios. Let's see, you guys know. Let's see, I think everybody knows all that stuff. Um, there, I just wanted to highlight that these are all the uh, places now that have active GMRS groups. So uh, they're kind of adopting the EVC model of integrating hams and GMRS and ham, and it's really good to see that these communities are spinning up. There's it's a lot of this is coordinated with the TC4 group that is the volunteer uh, coordination group for within the county. Let's see. And so we've been advocating using the new radio for them too. They're using a different radio for their GMRS radio, the both BTEC GMRS V1 V2 radio instead of the Baofeng that we were using, because
John,
it's a legal GMRS radio.
one of the reasons I had my Baofeng programmed to the new channels is because I have an adapter that slides into the battery socket on the radio and I can plug it into my car. Has anybody found something similar to that for the TID radios?
I don't know if they have that yet. Do you know if they have a battery eliminator, Michael?
No, but that's the first thing that came to mind for me was uh, I ordered from Amazon a little device that plugs into a cigarette lighter,
Mhm.
and it has a USB-A and a USB-C power port, and you can just plug a cable right into that and then plug it into the battery on the radio. So that's one of the reasons that TID got the nod, was that it made charging less complicated because there's a USB-C jack right on the battery.
Yep. Okay.
And my car has a USB-A and then a USB-C where use my cell phone. Well, I can use my cell phone, but I also can use a TID radio to power it for the same thing because it's USB-C. So it works out perfectly.
Yep. That's one of the big pluses about it.
Sounds like I need to find another cable.
Well,
So-
actually, the TID radio came with a cable,
Yeah.
and one end is
Yeah,
USB-A. It's the flat rectangular one, and that will go in any USB, any old
You
school
assume I know
USB.
where I put that cable, right?
Yeah, well, that's a different problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the other end is the USB-C connector that goes in the bottom of the battery.
I'll
And it
find
works
it.
just perfectly, so you can just plug it in.
Yep. Okay, so this is the radio, all the good things about it. So one of the things that we've done is it has two programmable buttons there, and we've programmed it, one for KQMI and one for NOAA, the Neocani NOAA weather station. So it's really easy to select those now. And the big change was the channel template. So this is the new channel template we've been putting in the radios. It adds all the GMRS channels. It uh, it adds a bunch of ham stuff. They're all the EVC ham channels are still in their same basic orientation, but they're off 30 for the channel numbers. So, 005, there's Manzanita, so it's 35, and Neocani is, instead of 014, it's 044. So everything is shifted by 30. And the other ham channels have all been updated to be more coastal. So the original ones, we had a bunch of ones from the valley and stuff, and we were missing some from the coast range. And so now they're kind of, if they kind of go north to south, roughly, on there. And there's stuff. So they're in there. There's a few from the valley, like the Oregon OEM, that's Salem and stuff. So there's still some in there. The public service ones are cut down quite a bit compared to the original template. They, after lots of scanning and keeping track of what channels actually had activity on them. So these are the ones that kind of have had activity on them at some point. So we got rid of all the other ones that didn't seem to be used very much. So the MERS things are all same as before in their same locations. I took out the unused, whoops. I took out the unused NOAA channels. I got a hold of Barb Riley and our local Coast Guard expert, and said, okay, Barb, what channels do we really need on the Marine? And she said these two were the two main ones. So I saved a bunch of channels that way. All the EVC ones here are just exactly what they were before. All the ones in green are the EVC things, and they're all in the same spot as they are in the old channel template. But I added all the new community ones. So Cannon Beach has one, Bay City, Rockaway Beach, Tillamook. Those are all GMRS repeaters now in those locations, so you can they have weekly nets, just like excuse me, they have nets just like we do. Sometimes they're weekly, sometimes they're monthly. It depends on the community. They do different schedules compared to us. So let's see. So the template notes. Let's see if I talked about all these. In the so the GMRS for the people without ham licenses, uh, their template looks exactly the same as this. So the ham and the GMRS templates channel wise are the same. Of course, the GMRS folks can't transmit on the ham channels. But the the key thing here is the GMRS version, we've programmed it into channel only mode. So you don't, on the old radios, it was, you had to make sure you were in channel mode and not frequency mode and all that stuff. Well, for GMRS folks, they don't have to worry about it. They're always in channel mode. And so that's one less thing for them to worry about. So the GMRS versions are channel mode. The ham versions do both. So just like they have before, you still have channel mode and frequency mode. Let's see. So because all the EVC channels are the same, you don't need to reprogram a radio, an old radio. You can put the old template you can put the new template in the old radio, but you don't need to. You don't have to do an upgrade, an update. One of the things that the new radio supports is it fixes the KQMI interruption issue. So you remember that exercise we did where we had people listen to KQMI and for information, and then anytime somebody talked on 119, it would cut out the KQMI. Very irritating when you're trying to get information off KQMI. Well, on the new radios, you can say, if I've selected KQMI, it stays KQMI no matter what else is going on. And so that's the way we've programmed it. If you like the old way, we can turn it back so that but we decided, no, we're going to just, if you've selected KQMI, you want to listen to KQMI. And so you ought to be able to. So that's that.
I have a question. I got a question, John.
Go.
The GRMS version, channel only, that only is on the TID radio, even though they've been remapped for the other radios. Okay.
Yeah, just on the TID radios.
Okay.
And John, one thing I was going to add, because you reminded me of this before. So if you go back to the channel template, John worked really hard to keep it within 127 channels so that this could be applied to the yellow radios and to any Baofeng. The TID radio actually has 199 channels. And so for hams who want to add additional repeaters for the valley or things like that, you have from channel 128 to 199 wide open and free to add in whatever you'd like.
Yep. Yeah, at first we took advantage of those extra channels, and then we kind of came to the realization of, oh, well, if we did this, we could if we made the hams add 30, we could make one thing that worked for everybody. And we made the call that hams are smart enough to add 30. So I hope that's the case. Okay. I'm not going to talk about that. We're running out of time. So just a fun thing. I found a website that lets you map where hams are. And let me switch over to it here. Hang on. Screen sharing. Oops. You're going to stop sharing. So I'll put this, let me put this link. Oops. I'm going to share it first. I'll put this link in the chat. So if you want to grab it, you can grab it. So it's in the chat. So it's this guy that's accesses the database, the FCC database, and lets you, put in addresses and stuff. So I put in Manzanita, and here's what comes up. And the caveat here is that if you have your license as a PO box, it won't appear here because it doesn't. It would have all the calls piled up at the post office, and but if you have something like, if you look at mine here, we have our address, the physical address, and a PO box. So that's what we have in the FCC database for us, and so we appear where we are on the map, and so and it's nice. You can scroll all around, and it'll populate where everybody is, and I think that last count that I looked in Tillamook County, there's like 300 hams.
Wow.
So, and those are just the those are just the people who have their license address as Tillamook County. There's a lot of hams who are part-timers that live in Portland or Seattle or something, and they have their licenses there, so they of course won't appear anything here. But so you can go to this website and just scroll around, and it's kind of interesting it'll update no matter where as you scroll where people are and stuff. So it's kind of a fun thing. Look at all the hams up there in Clatsop County.
Wow.
It's really,
Oh,
it's just massive numbers compared to when you come down here. Let's see, it'll take a while for it to, there we go. There's still quite a few down here in Tillamook and stuff. And since we have Craig on the line, on the list on here, Nesquin, I don't know whether are you done? Let's see if, oops. You're not on here, Craig. You're down in
No,
Nesco, aren't you?
no, I'm in Oceanside, but I'm also a PO
Oceanside.
box.
That's right. Oh, you're on a PO box. Okay, so you wouldn't be on here. But it's a fun little tool to
Play with.
if you wanna see where folks are, and you can do it by zip code if you want to restrict it to a zip code or just a particular call sign. That's my little fun fact, fun thing to share. So, anything for the good of the order?
Good meeting.
Yeah, I thought I'd have a surprise, but they my shipment got delayed. So I did get a new TID radio in today, but it's a Gen 2. And the Gen 3 is on an airplane somewhere.
Oh,
So I was hoping to be able to hold one up and go, here's a Generation 3. So I ordered one and it's in the mail,
What's the
but
difference between Gen 1, Gen 3, Gen 2?
One.
sorry, I didn't hear that.
What's the difference between Gen 3 and Gen 2?
So Gen 3 adds the capabilities, the AM capabilities in the H3 that John has to receive aviation band. It adds that to the H8. And then they have some bug fixes and apparently some better performance in working with repeaters. And so I was curious, and so I ordered one so I could play with it.
Has anybody among the among the TID radio folks tried doing firmware upgrades? The last time I tried one, it was a mess, and I reverted back to the previous version, and I decided not to touch it anymore. Has anybody else had problems with the firmware upgrades?
I haven't been that brave yet. I haven't tried. Now
You're,
that I have
you're
two,
pushing
I
the
can-
envelope, Ray.
Yeah, well, for a while there, anytime they send out a new firmware upgrade, I went ahead and jumped on it because, I want the latest and the greatest. Well, the last one just screwed up. The last time I did it, just screwed up my radio. I went back to the one prior to that, and I haven't done anything with it since. I like the radio, my little H3, just the way it is right now. So I'm not going to fart with it anymore.
I like it working.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Yeah.
the third generation is about $69, almost $70 on Amazon. You can get it, and once we find out, I don't know if I'd use it for GMRS and that because the value of the other one I like, the second generation, but I think for hams, if they want to upgrade, it would be a good idea. It's something for the hams to think about.
Yeah, and so I ordered one so I could play with it and actually do power level checks on it. And I'm going to do a spectrum sweep on it and stuff like that, just to make sure that they haven't broken anything in going from 2 to 3. And then I want to see.
You let us know what you come up with.
That's right. So somebody's got to be the stunt double or
Yeah,
the
the
dummy.
guinea pig.
Yeah, crash test dummy.
Crash test dummy. Yeah,
There you
that's
go. Yeah.
you got to get the dummy in there.
Right.
Okay, well, thanks everybody. You're the stalwart ham crew. That it's much.
Well, I had to zoom back from Astoria to make it here on time. I'm helping a friend with some physical therapy up there, and I told him, "Don't dawdle. I need to get back here by 4 o'clock." So we made it. All right, John. Thank you very much.
Okay, we'll see everybody.
Thanks, John.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.